Feminism is cancer. Thank you very much.
That universities have started to go along with it. They have started to respect students' points of view when the students claim that they have been emotionally traumatized by different opinions. And the trigger warning and safe space culture has started to take root even in the best institutions in the country. My view on this is that anybody who asks for a safe space or a trigger warning should be immediately expelled. They have demonstrated... They have demonstrated that they are incapable of meeting the requirements of their course. Why are you here? Why are you here if not to discover new ways of looking at the world, to discover thinkers and ideas, history, stuff you never imagined that was possible, to broaden your intellectual horizons? If you're not prepared to do that, go home, leave.
The problem is that what most people don't realise, the gender pay gap is a sort of myth. No economist takes it seriously. The ONS figures come from broad church sort of averages across the workforce, and when you take into account the different choices women make, whether or not you include children in that, actually the pay gap narrows to zero. So I'm in favour of this only because it's going to really embarrass these campaigners who constantly tell women that they're victims and that they're suffering under this sort of patriarchal society. Actually, women and men get paid pretty much the same to the point of a couple of percent. So I am in favour of it, but only because it's going to explode one of the most persistent feminist myths of our time, the gender pay gap.
That we should judge people on the contents of their character, that we should interrogate arguments, not skin colour. And I think we should also be able to agree, I think we should also try at least to agree, that the way to achieve equality is not to lie about rape, as feminists do. The way to achieve equality is not to lie about how people are remunerated, as feminists do. Islam is a set of ideas, and like any other set of ideas, we are perfectly entitled to interrogate it and find it wanting. I personally find it wanting. I would also like to say, as a gay person, I am fucking terrified by mass Muslim immigration because the homophobia in the Islamic community, in the Ummah, is not restricted to terrorists. It is not restricted to ISIS. 51% of British Muslims believe that gay sex should be against the law. This is not Muslims in Syria. This is not Muslims in Raqqa. This is Muslims who live 3 streets away from me. Every other one of them believes that my lifestyle should be illegal. 39% of British Muslims believe that a woman should always obey her husband. Where the fuck are feminists on that? 25%... 25% of British Muslims believe that Sharia law should be instituted, which under certain circumstances treats a woman's...
Milo, he's trying to narrow in on a question.
Well, I'm going to finish. Treats a woman's testimony as worth half of a man's. The Queers for Palestine, possibly the stupidest people to walk the face of the earth, overlook the statistic that 97% of Palestinians believe that homosexuality is an unacceptable lifestyle choice. I'm not scared by terrorists, I'm scared by Islam.
We're in a situation now where students can go to university, they come out dumber than when they went in. They are infantilized by safe space and trigger warning culture. The idea that interrogating a new idea, coming into contact with a school of thought or a person that doesn't conform to your prejudices is somehow problematic, that it gives rise to trauma. This evening, there is a safe space at Michigan University to protect the safety and emotional well-being of students from this dangerous faggot and a lesbian with the wrong opinions. That is insane.
These figures are... You're going to accuse me of mansplaining, aren't you? These figures come from averages across society. They don't take into account the different life choices that women make. The reality is that women do prefer a more balanced life. When they go to work, even if they don't have babies, they take longer holidays. They tend to take more holidays. The reason that you know, they are paid more, up to about 30, 35, 39, depending on whose figures you believe. The reason that flips
only between 30 and 39.
No, that's actually not true. The reason that the figures flip after that age is because women make different life choices.
Right.
And if you take those life choices into account, no serious economist believes this stuff. It's repeated by politicians right up to President Obama, but no serious economist takes the wage gap seriously.
A particular brand of feminism which holds almost total sway in the media and in gender studies and women's studies departments. There are honourable exceptions. by and large, I don't expect you to comment on any of your colleagues, but a lot of your colleagues are off-the-wall mental.
You hear this a lot from scientists, you hear this a lot in particular from female scientists, but the fact is that there is some reason to suppose that there is an advantage to being a man in certain subjects. There's reason to suppose that gender essentialism, biological determinism, whatever you want to call it, the fact that there are male brains and female brains, may indeed have some basis in science. Now, this is sort of thrown out of the window completely by feminists and female academics who just refuse to accept that there's any reason whatsoever why there might be a gender imbalance. Two things on that. One, actually the science is very much still out on that. And two, if you look at equality in society, if you look, for example, at Bangladesh versus Norway, what you notice is the number of women in science and technology subjects actually goes down as societies get more equal, because women simply don't make the same choices that female academics and feminists would like them to. Women actually don't want to go into the sciences on the whole, and when they have every option available to them, they tend to choose not to.
Sorry to be rude. I'm sorry to be rude, but, you know, get a lot of platitudes and then a lot of contradictions from my right, because, you know, you say, well, we should have investigated diplomatic solutions, and yet you admit that the rebels haven't come to the table. I wonder
No, I disagree with you.
How do you I mean, what is your strategy for negotiating with a brick wall? Because it's quite difficult to negotiate when there's only one party.
I disagree with you. If a process hasn't worked, it doesn't mean that you don't keep going. I think what was really significant
today... or do you
today,
disagree that the rebels have refused to even contemplate? And in any case,
so
who
far
would
they
you
have
approach,
to.
by the way? Because
this
is not an organisation with a figurehead. This is a coalition. Exactly. Who exactly are you going to negotiate with?
So that is why you need a different
strategy. Right now, nobody even knows who to talk to.
No, I don't agree that bigoted speech is always a bad thing. I think it's important to hear from them. I think it's important to hear from them. You see, what the left wants to do is it wants to enable its extremists on its own side, the sexists and misandrists of the feminism, the black supremacists of Black Lives Matter. They want to enable the extremists on their own side and silence the extremists on the other. Well, I don't like the extremists on either side. Racists, I don't like them, and they don't like me. I'm a miscegenatory, gay Jew. They don't like me at all. But what I want to do is give a platform to all speech. I want more speech of all kinds.
Subjected to abuse that is saddening them and that is affecting them quite deeply. What advice would you give?
Toughen up. Toughen up. The majority of what's called abuse, harassment and trolling is ridicule. Sometimes it's strong ridicule. It's criticism. Sometimes it's strong criticism. But that's what the internet's for. And, you know, we're going to miss out on some really important, essential conversations if we don't allow people to communicate in the way that they want to.
No longer fit for purpose. The Democrat Party is a mess. The Republican Party deserves to be destroyed. It is no longer fit for purpose. It disrespects and betrays its own base. It no longer practices conservative principles in government. It deserves to be ripped in two. If we believe in a conservative vision of the world, the Republican Party is not going to get us there.
Extraordinary, isn't it, to hear about, you know, the fact that there's apparently a problem with women worrying about being too thin. That's, of course, not the problem. The problem is that everyone's getting too fat, and actually there's no evidence really that any of this stuff has much of an impact. A lot of the science is very fuzzy on this. It's social science stuff rather than any real sort of reports or anything. I mean, what worries me about all of this kind of stuff is the implication that somehow we're going to make people's lives happier or better by encouraging them to believe that whatever body shape they are and whatever they look like, they're beautiful and they're going to be happy. That's evident. That's quite clearly not the case. I mean, if you look at women's happiness has been going down since the Second World War. Actually, every decade, women are getting more miserable as they get told that they can be who they want and look how they like. And you can say, I suppose, that a woman's self-esteem should have nothing to do with whether or not a man's sexual preference, you know, sort of coincides with how she looks. But the fact is, women are getting more unhappy, and this sort of slightly irresponsible trend to sort of encourage people to eat whatever they want and do whatever they want is is one of the things that's fueling an obesity crisis, and that's a really serious thing. That's a real thing. That's something that's got health implications. It's got cost implications for the NHS. The problem isn't too many anorexic women. The problem is quite in the opposite direction. We're perfectly happy to have aspirational role models in our entertainment. We should have them too in our retail. There's nothing wrong with encouraging people to live healthily.
No cloud service is ever going to be completely secure. Apple does have a responsibility to make its software as secure as possible, but there will always be hackers who are much smarter and much cleverer and are much more determined to exploit vulnerabilities. What this boils down to for celebrities, just like everybody else, is personal responsibility. And if you're going to take pictures of yourself like that, by far the most intelligent thing to do is do it with a Polaroid. Don't do it on a device that's connected to the internet, that's sending your pictures structures to servers you don't control. It's a recipe for madness. And for somebody who is as rich and as famous as Jennifer Lawrence is, it's sort of unbelievable.